Now, if you're not ready, then go ahead and just tell me you're not ready.
I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives.
I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not a lawyer, but
the debrief.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of I'm Not a Lawyer, But
The debrief.
I am Melanie, aka I'm Not a Lawyer, But, and I am joined by my co-host,
Goosebay. How y'all doing?
We are not lawyers or legal experts, but we talk about legal things on this podcast, and y'all tend to like it, and we like y'all too. So we are going to hit on a couple things this episode. We have a guest that I'm very excited to have. His name is Jim. He is a real lawyer, and he's going to talk about receiverships because I've been covering the Uncle Nearest situation, and I cover it based off of obviously the research I've been able to do. I also cover it based off of the documents that I clearly read. But to have somebody who has actually worked in receiverships and understand it in a way that I don't just from reading, I think will be useful. So I'm very, very excited. He goes by the Happily Angry Lawyer he's on Twitter and he's also on YouTube. So anyway, he's going to join us. He also has done some criminal defense work and represented Mounk Tunk, if you remember Mounk Tunk from YSL in his appeal. So I'm going to ask him about that. But just a really smart guy and knows a ton. So I'm very excited to have him. But before we do that, the fallout from the Afroman trial has just been a time. It has just been, it's like the gift that keeps on giving. I feel like people are still finding out about that trial today. So my videos just keep getting comments. They keep the views on every single platform just keep growing, and it is so funny. So anyway,
freedom of speech.
We
baby.
we got some objections from that. So I'm going to play them. And that's how we can kind of start this off. Let's start with the first objection.
Hi, Mel. Hi, Goosey. I do have an objection for the Afroman trial. On Friday's episode, the very first objection that you played, basically, I agree with what she was saying because what she said was, how would we feel, if somebody was wrongly accusing us or saying something like that about us, Do I feel like all of this is petty and childish? Absolutely. You guys are grown-ups. But if you think about it, one, they live in a town where everybody knows them. Everybody is able to come and approach them about certain things. It's not like they get to live in peace now that he didn't put out all this stuff. I also feel like if somebody said, made false allegations about me and what I be doing and who I am, I'm gonna for sure defend myself. It's gonna be a problem. So I don't like how everybody's trying to make it seem like, oh, they taking it too far. No, we need to address it because you're a liar. I'm looping him in with the childishness because you're a grown man making music about these people, defaming their name, being weird and crazy. It's too much.
I got confused for a second. I was like, wait, whose side is she on? Who is she mad at? But I think she said she's mad at both of them. I think her point was both of them are petty.
No, yes.
Okay.
But she's siding with the police officers.
Oh, okay.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah. And I understand what she's saying, but no. You shouldn't have came into my house. You shouldn't have stole my money. And it's freedom of speech. I can say what I want to say about you. Whether it's true or not, it's all entertainment.
And I think the bigger issue around the whole thing is the threat to freedom of speech and the threat to being able to criticize public officials. And I think when you are weighing the importance of that versus him making songs about them, it becomes of the utmost importance to protect the First Amendment. And so anyway, I hear what she's saying, but I think because that is so key to this democracy, to this country, to us as citizens, anything threatening that has to be shut down. So I think that is where I land on it. and people have eaten me up because of what I said about Lisa. But go ahead.
You can take it. It's, if I slap you, you can slap me back, right? But if I'm a bigger person than you and I can just take advantage of you, should I slap you back or should I just take the high road and be like, you got it, man?
Oh,
whatever. He could have done that and just left it alone. You know what I'm saying? But you can't dictate on how somebody's going to react.
Well, we should play Coretta's thing because she has more. Coretta from the Patreon, who's been following this more. I kind of, y'all know how I go. When I follow a case and then it's over and then I'll be like, moving on. But there's been so much that has continued to come out. And so Coretta from the Patreon has been continuing to follow it and is going to have some more updates, even just about the search warrant and more about that. So I actually want to play hers. I just think it'll be good context.
Yep.
Hi, Mel and Greg. This is Coretta from your Patreon. I have been still looking into all things Afroman, and I just heard a interview of one of the jurors. Anonymously did an interview on YouTube, and she talked about how surprised the jury members were about how easy it was to get this search warrant to go into Afroman's house. And I was looking at the search warrant, or at least the affidavit that was supporting it based on information from a confidential informant. And it's terrible. It is not reliable. It was not corroborated, particularly things like a basement, a dungeon in the basement, that nobody looked into whether there was even a basement attached to this house in the records or just driving by. The idea that there was a kidnapped woman there. They had a description supposedly from the CI, but nobody looked into a missing persons report or somebody matching this lady's description. This information was at least over a month old, according to the CI. She also said that there was armed security all the time. There was no evidence that they corroborated that. She also said that there was a false wall that she saw get built. Well, they didn't look into the plans for that or find the builder and talk to him. She also had motivation as a drug addict who has a theft criminal record and was mad at him for other reasons to make up stuff. So when Afroman is complaining and so upset and taking to the internet to complain about what was done to him, starting with the search warrant, he really has every reason, because it's hard for me to believe they would have taken such a thinly sourced search warrant and used it against any other quote unquote decent or upstanding citizen in their town. I think they wanted, Officer Newland in particular, wanted to get in on Afroman's house. They really wanted to get in there about drugs. They used the kidnapping as a subterfuge because they had at least someone saying it, but the someone was not believable, and they really didn't corroborate anything. And this is not a reliable person that they were really using for any other cases. And she was there with 1,000, I think it was actually 2,000 grams of marijuana herself, and they didn't arrest her or charge her or do anything to her, even though she had way more marijuana than they found at Afroman's house. So the whole thing stinks. Government has got to be held accountable. This was a win for Americans and the First Amendment, and these officers need to really learn a lesson from it. Lots of interesting stuff on YouTube and on the internet about this, and thank you for covering this case, Mel. You brought it to us first.
Thank you, Coretta, for the update.
Her voice
isn't it so good?
It's perfect.
She does have the best voice.
I forgot her and I forgot the other guy's name.
Yeah.
But that was a great interview.
Yes, thank you, Coretta, for dialing in and keeping up with the keeping up.
So Coretta, thank you. Afroman had all right to go in on these people the way he went in on them. And it was, well, the other guy he was calling a pedophile, but everything else was funny to me. Yeah, they did that man wrong. And they suck it up. You got to get my lip back. And he got his lip back.
Well, and the other thing, actually, I think Jim said on another page that he was on, the attorney we're going to have, is something I hadn't considered. But when you think about some of the people we've seen on the stand, entertainers are charismatic. They're entertainers. Like they are good at this. And so when you put someone who entertains for a living on the stand against a lawyer who 9 times out of 10 is not going to deliver in that same way,
Yep.
that is such a risk. You are risking it all. And so you put Afroman on the stage, on the stand, who is already very passionate because this happened to him. He's upset, but he just comes like, you lawyer, you can't stand up. And yet think about Cardi B. Cardi B was on that stand against that lawyer. She just like swallowed it up. He looks foolish. And the entertainer comes across as charismatic and funny and entertaining because that's what they do. It's such a risk to go against an entertainer. I would be like, please don't take the stand. To your point,
the stand is their stage.
Yes.
And they're going to fire back.
They finna show up, honey.
Yep.
Show up and show out. What a risk. And so anyway, it's just.
And especially when you're in the wrong.
Especially when you're in the wrong. You get them passionate and incensed about what happened to them.
Man.
Whew. Good luck.
Why do the police have these CIs?
Oh my
gosh.
And
they find the worst ones.
The worst ones. Ma'am, you are on
this lady had 200 some grams of weed. And you didn't lock up each what's that? I'm thinking about ounces and pounds. Anyway.
We can't believe nothing you're saying.
We can't believe anything you're saying.
It's crazy. And then
dungeon.
I did hear what Coretta was saying about the fact that the information was that it was this basement, this dungeon and he didn't even have one at his house. He don't even have a basement. Y'all gotta check. That's why when we talk about corroboration, right? It's not just like police are told something, but it's their job.
You all, if you tell me that I have to go into a home,
something that corroborates it.
If I'm an officer, matter of fact, when we go on tour and before we go into a facility, I Google search the area.
Yeah.
To see the building.
Right.
To see this is me as a tour manager.
You're right. These people are not even, they're just like, yo, what's up? he got a person in there.
My life isn't in danger.
It's crazy.
I'm looking at the site.
Also somebody in the Patreon, because I saw this when it got posted, that the judge is so petty because he is making the court fees be split with Afroman and the and the cops, which is actually insane. Like you could tell he was not happy. He was not happy that Afroman won. He was like, no, if they can't win, I'm gonna stick it to you the way I know how. So that was very crappy. But anyway, that was our quick segment. We needed to wrap up Afroman. Again, it is still going viral. People are still discovering this case. So there's more content. As Coretta just said, there's more stuff to consume about Afroman. If you are down the rabbit hole, you can keep going, honey. There is more. That said, like I said at the beginning, we have a very special guest that we are so excited to join. A real attorney. You know, we're not ones, but anytime we can have a real one come on, we do so to get some actual knowledge. So that is what we have happening. Okay, so we are very excited to have, again, a real attorney, Jim, who goes by the Happily Angry Lawyer on most platforms, but his real name is Jim. I can't pronounce your last name, so you will have to do that part.
Yeah, it's Robichaud.
Robichaud.
Yep.
Okay. That was not bad, actually.
Robichaud.
Robichaud.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's that main French in me.
I love it. Okay. We are so excited to have you join us. This is your first time on the platform, so I'm so grateful for you to join us. Before we kind of get into receiverships and the Uncle Nearest case, introduce yourself to the audience, what kind of law you practice. Some of you may know his name because he also represents Moontunk. So anyway, just give a little intro to yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Jim Robichaud. I'm a lawyer outside of Los Angeles, used to be in Los Angeles. I originally did bankruptcy, receivership, insolvency related work. About a year ago, I started doing criminal defense work because of the YSL case kind of got under my skin. That's not what we're here to talk about, though. So I'm not going to monologue about that.
But wait, is that literally why you got into criminal defense, is because of that case?
Yeah, actually, I was in bankruptcy and receivership, and I was doing that, and I couldn't sleep one night, and I started watching. I saw a clip. It was like I got clickbaited. It was like, watch this attorney get locked up, and I see this old guy with white hair getting locked up. I'm like, this is going to be funny. And so I clicked that as Brian Steele. I'm like, wait a minute, it was still kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I started following it after that, and basically the next person after Rudy was Moontunk. And I was like kind of catching up and trying to find out what was going on. And I noticed there were some issues. The sentence was clearly illegal, which we've already won on. And so I started doing that and tweeting about it. And then eventually somebody put me in touch with Antonio directly. And
Antonio
Sledge, yeah. And actually I had to leave my job to take that representation. So I quit my job and started doing criminal defense work. I also represented a second. I don't really talk about this, but I did represent a second YSL defendant in that case.
Really?
Yeah. And I can tell you about that off air. But
okay.
Yeah, I did represent a second YSL defendant. And and I also have another case coming up with somebody in Georgia, in Brunswick, Glenn County, Georgia. That's a crazy one.
So you're in California, but you're representing clients in Georgia.
Yeah, part of the tricky thing, I don't have a license in Georgia, so I got to find somebody in Georgia to partner up with. So I got Tiffany Adams, who I think the fit lawyer for Moontunk, and Rachel Kaufman was my partner in the other YSL case. And then I'm not going to say, but somebody you will know who the other person is for the
How are you enjoying the criminal side?
Yeah, it's I had a lot. We'll get into this. I had a lot of fun with the receivership stuff, just because I think I gave you a hand last time about some of the crazy stuff that comes up. But the criminal stuff it's a little bit more high stakes, I think. With corporate stuff, one of my mentors, actually my firm appointed mentor, said usually you're fighting on behalf of one pile of money against another pile of money, about a third pile of money in the middle, and nobody really cares. Especially even with the corporations, they're not really that concerned about the outcome because it's a rounding error. But with criminal stuff, it's somebody's life is on the line, or reputation on the line with respect to Moontunk.
Yeah.
When you have people saying that he's been convicted of things that he hasn't been, especially when they're, I don't know how to say this without getting you demonetized, but certain classes of crimes that he was accused of that were just completely fabricated. So people's reputations and liberty is at stake.
Yeah.
And so that's
is it still ongoing?
Yeah, we're still waiting on the Court of Appeal. We already won. He already got a 10-year sentence reduction. The Judge Whitaker acknowledged that his sentence was illegal. It was 10 years above the statutory maximum because the indictment was wrong. The same is true for actually you might remember in YSL it was one of Shannon's counts was directed verdict because they didn't allege all of the elements. It's the same thing for Moontunk and a couple of Christian Epinger's counts and one of Yak's counts. Yeah, actually, okay, we're doing like a whole YSL tangent here.
I know. We'll pivot.
Yeah, I'll say this one last thing about Eppinger. So he had 2 counts of possession. What was it? It was felon in possession of a firearm. It related to the officer when he shot Officer Rogers, and he shot at the second officer.
Okay.
But they messed it up in the re-indictment, and they took away the identities of the officers that were shot at. So that's why they had to dismiss one of the counts.
Really?
Yeah, they messed up one of the officer shootings indictment counts. That didn't really get picked up by the media, but that was kind of an oversight on Fonny's part.
Insane.
Yep. That was why that happened with Eppinger.
I have a question because I've consumed your content, and
sure.
The thing that I love is that it always feels like those kind of I don't even know if you want to call them technicalities, but like these, it seems like you're really good at spotting inconsistencies, technicalities, things like that matter. But I'm curious if your work, your previous work actually is what informs that. Like, was all of that really, really important in the previous work you've done, and now you've been able to apply it in a way that like helps people?
Yeah. They're kind of two-part. One is I didn't know anything about criminal law. I was just following it because I thought like Brian Steele getting locked up was funny. Not in hindsight, but at the time. And I had to teach myself everything. So I was like trying to understand what was going on. And I just didn't understand what was going on. And for the longest time, I thought like I was the problem. And so because I was looking, I think the reason I found some of those details was because I didn't know what to expect. And I was looking at it with like completely fresh eyes.
Got it.
And some of those inconsistencies popped out. Whereas if you know what you're doing, you're kind of like expecting to see something. So you might look past it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, certainly the work that we did in receivership and bankruptcy was, instructive and informative.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, I guess a lot of law requires you to pay attention to details. But definitely, I think big law training, you'll get yelled at a lot if you make mistakes. So
got it.
You're kind of trained to pay careful attention to detail.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that YSL
Recap.
recap. We're always here for that. But the reason
I'll let you know when we get a ruling on Antonio.
Please,
for sure.
Please do. The reason that we have you is to talk about receiverships, and specifically because I've been covering Uncle Nearest, the whiskey brand who was put into a receivership, ordered into a receivership last August, I believe, is when it was actually, the order was actually handed down. And the way that kind of originated is Farm Credit Mid-America, which is a loan company. They had loaned Uncle Nearest a lot of money. They owe them over $100 million. Basically, they hadn't been getting their money, so they go to the court and say, basically, do something, judge, because they can't pay us our money, and something needs to be done. They go back and forth. The judge ultimately decides to put a receiver in place. One, actually, that the Uncle Nearest team, Fawn Weaver and her team, actually suggested, recommended. That is who was actually put in place. And so the initial report from the receiver was pretty positive. The receiver was like, this is actually not that bad, and this is going to work out. And then in January, after he said that, the Uncle Nearest team was like, see, we don't need a receiver. We're good. And then the receiver came out with the second report and was like, actually, not so fast. Things are worse than I thought. This has kind of taken a turn. And so that's kind of the short version. What has happened most recently is the receiver has come to the judge because he wants to sell off some of the assets that aren't making money. And that includes some of the, I think there's a vodka side of the business. There's a cognac, a property in Cognac, France that they want to sell. There is the property in Martha's Vineyard that they want to sell. So they've come to the judge, the receiver, and saying we want to sell this. While all of that is kind of happening, Fawn Weaver has filed for bankruptcy, and the receiver freaks out because he's like, per the order from the judge, the receivership order, I have basically exclusive power over this I do this. You don't. You can't touch nothing. And now that you've done this, you should be sanctioned. So the receiver is asking the judge to sanction Fawn Weaver. While that, again, is happening, she has filed for this bankruptcy. It goes to the bankruptcy judge, and the judge is like, no, you can't file for bankruptcy per the order. You don't have the ability to do this. And so that's kind of the very short synopsis of where we are at this point. Where I'm waiting. I've been refreshing the docket, waiting for what the judge is going to do or say. There's going to be a hearing, I would assume, but maybe not. We'll see. Waiting for what's next. So that's the background. But to start at just general basic knowledge, how would you explain? I'm not a lawyer. You are, but how would you, if you were not a lawyer, explain receivership and kind of how that happens and why that kind of happens?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the first thing I'll say is most of what I'll say, there are going to be exceptions to. So I'm going to give the most broadly applicable and applicable here answers. But generally speaking, somebody is sued usually either for breach of contract or fraud. And usually the plaintiff will ask the court to appoint a receiver while the lawsuit is ongoing. The idea is, of course, that if you're being sued and you know that there's a good chance you might lose, you might not pay that much attention to your property and let it decline in value. If you're a bad actor, you might hide it somewhere, put it in somebody else's name, put it in Bitcoin, send it to Vietnam. Not that I've seen that. So you want to have a receiver basically take possession of all of the property, or much of the property, the applicable property, and sort of administer that property during the litigation.
Wait, hold on. Sorry. Wait, just so that I'm clear. The origination of it starts with the lawsuit. Is that what you're saying? And then through the lawsuit, you're saying put a receiver in place. That's so in this case, they were suing because they are owed $100 million. And because they don't believe they're going to get that because of the way the company is being run, put somebody in place so that we can get what we're suing for, basically?
Yeah, basically. I mean, receiverships, again, are exceptions, but generally it's called a provisional remedy. So it means it's a remedy that's during the pendency of the lawsuit while the lawsuit's ongoing. So it's kind of like an injunction. An injunction is also a provisional remedy, generally speaking. So you just try to maintain the status quo, basically.
Got it.
So in general, almost always receiverships are tied to litigation. Like in my SEC or FTC receiverships, you usually see it with a complaint. It would be a complaint and request for the appointment of a receiver in a single document. But almost always it's going to be tied to some kind of underlying litigation.
Got it. Okay. I interrupted.
Nope, that's fine. Let me see. Okay, so you'll get the petition. There'll usually be some debate about whether as there was in the Uncle Nearest case, about whether the receiver will be appointed, whether it's necessary. The court will look at things like, was there fraud before the lawsuit? Is the company insolvent? Is it necessary? Because it is kind of an extreme remedy. You're taking away control of a company or control of property from the defendant. So courts are often hesitant to appoint receivers. But okay, so skipping ahead, assume the court appoints a receiver. The receiver is an officer of the court. So they work for the court directly, not for either of the parties.
Oh, okay.
Although oftentimes the one side will pay for the receiver, but that's a different issue. The appointment order will set forth the specific assets that are subject to the receivership. It has to be a person can't be in receivership. Like a human being can't be in receivership, like a corporate person can. So
that's something else. That happened to Britney Spears. Okay.
That did. And what's her favorite? Wanda Williams, I believe. I was
listening to Wendy Williams.
Man, I completely botched that one.
It's okay.
I'm all prepared for Uncle Nearest. I got like Mike Senzaki's name ready here.
Okay.
Oh man.
Okay.
What did I say?
You good. You said Wanda.
Wanda. It's all right. You meant Wendy. It's all right.
Man. All right. That's focus. Okay. So so there's the receivership. We usually call it the receivership estate, which is all the property that's in the receivership. Sometimes people who aren't the defendant have that property. That you see that really common in Ponzi schemes, where some other person will have the property of the receivership because somebody gave it to them when they weren't supposed to. So sometimes they'll actually have to sue third parties to get the property back into the receivership estate under the control of the receiver. But again, that's all subject to the appointment order, which is really the document that governs everything. Usually there's some kind of resolution to the lawsuit and property will be distributed in accordance with what happens in the underlying litigation. Then at the end, there's an accounting in a report. The receiver has to account for everything, not everything, but all the major stuff that they did, what they did with the property, what property they took possession of, what they were paid, submit that report to the court signs off on it, and that's the end of the receivership.
Okay.
And at the end, there can be disputes about how much money the receiver should be paid or what they did. If there's any kind of negligence lawsuit, it would against the receiver, it would come up at that point. But yeah, that's generally the life cycle of a receivership.
Does the time, like how long one is in place, vary a ton, or is there a typical amount of time?
Oh, it varies. A huge amount. I mean, we've had receiverships. Well, I say we, like I'm still there. The firm I used to work at would have receiverships going for many years.
Really?
Yeah, because like I said, particularly in the Ponzi scheme cases, because there's the litigation that starts the receivership, but then you have the litigation to claw back the property that was given out through
Got it.
the Ponzi scheme. So that was probably the thing we spent the most time on, was the litigation that came from that initial litigation, the clawback actions. And you have you can have 10, 15, 50 lawsuits within that main receivership lawsuit, and litigating all those can take years.
Okay.
So it can last a great deal of time. And sometimes you have a quick one where you'll have like a single apartment building that goes into receivership. Everybody agrees that it needs to be sold, and you can sell it in like, I don't know, a couple months, maybe a week, depending on how, whether you have a buyer ready and whatnot. So it varies enormously. And receivership is flexible in general. It varies a lot in a lot of respects. It's a lot more flexible.
With receivership, is it a team of individuals, or is it just like, who is this person? Who is the receiver? Like, what are their qualifications?
Depends on the receiver. Sometimes our qualifications are pretty questionable, I would say. Generally, I mean, at the federal level, sometimes lawyers, sometimes not. But first of all, your first question, it is a single person. They will usually have a team around them. Oftentimes they have a whole set of employees, and oftentimes the team will have like an accountant, some kind of forensic accountant. Sometimes they'll have investigators. The best receivers will have like retired FBI agents as investigators. Sometimes DOJ people on their team. Sometimes very qualified. But it is a single person. That single person is ultimately responsible for the receivership. And yeah, usually what I would look for in terms of qualifications is some kind of accounting experience, some kind of legal experience. Oftentimes not a lawyer, because lawyers are expensive, and sometimes you can get somebody that's less expensive but still qualified. But really, I mean, you get a broad array of people who are receivers. Sometimes they'll have a real estate background if it's a real estate property that's in receivership. You want somebody that knows how to sell like a commercial property pretty quickly, so they can then branch out into receivership work that way.
So I'm in the court system. We're having trial. The receivership, the judge says there needs to be a receivership.
Yeah.
There's a receivership firm
Or a person.
Or the receiver works for the court.
Yep.
Okay, so that's their department, basically.
Well, I mean, they're not like an employee of the court, but they're appointed by the court. So
just like a law firm, it's just a law firm. It's different firms.
Yeah. I think that's I guess it would be, well, it's a third party. It is an officer of the court, so you're appointed, but you're not like employed by the court. You'll often have your own like business that is you're in the business of being a receiver, so you'll have your own entity that way. But it's usually like a single person that is named as the receiver, although they work for their company. It is kind of a funny relationship between the court and the receiver, because you are an officer of the court, but you're also working for yourself. But ultimately, you are under the supervision of the court. You're acting as an arm of the court. When the receiver, this is actually kind of relevant to what we were talking about. If the receiver has control of property, technically the court has control of property. So if somebody interferes with the receiver's control of the property, technically they're interfering with the court's control of the property. So that's how you can get into direct contempt issues there. But it is an interesting kind of relationship between the receiver and the judge.
That kind of brings me to a question about this bankruptcy situation. So what I was reading in Uncle Nearest's response, to the receiver saying, I have exclusive power, essentially. The way Uncle Nearest responded, and they cited some cases that apparently, at least on the state side, is that with receiverships, company leadership still has the ability to file for bankruptcy. So that is what they stood on, and why they felt like they had a good faith basis to do what they did. Mike, I have all the questions, but I guess just respond to that and then tell me, in your experience, is that common? Do you feel like they really effed up?
I mean, I think they have enough to not get sanctioned, probably, but that's about all they have. I mean, basically, so I have it open here. Basically, what they were saying is the general rule is that the appointment of a receiver does not affect the company's, or by extension, manager's authority to file bankruptcy. Okay, that's true. The general rule. But in this case, we have a specific appointment. Remember, I said earlier, the appointment order is kind of where everything comes from. And there's a specific order that says, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but receivers vested power of subject entities. The receiver shall be exclusively vested with all the powers of officers, directors, members, blah, blah, blah. Basically saying that in this case, the receiver does have complete control of the companies. And so that kind of overrules.
There's a specific section on bankruptcy.
Yep.
And that part doesn't mention it. That's their argument. We know what you said in 10A, but in 10F or whatever, I'm going off the top of my head, but in that one, the section that says bankruptcy, exclusivity is not there. So we thought, and lawyering is all about manipulation. So
yes. I mean, okay. So you're right. I mean, you're right. That is what they're arguing. But it's wrong. 10 is basically, it just basically lists things that the receiver is authorized to do. And this is pretty typical in an appointment order. They'll give specific things, like you are authorized to do these specific things. And they're saying you didn't say we can't do this in this section, but the section's entirely about what the receiver can do. It makes no sense to put in there why you'd have.
Got it.
You wouldn't put a restriction on Weaver or anybody else in that section because it's a section about what the receiver can do.
Got it.
And more generally, I think all they're saying is like there's no rule that says we can't do it. Or there's no order saying we can't file for bankruptcy, which even if that's true, you still need something that says you can do it. It's like, mommy didn't say I can't have this ice cream, so I'm allowed to have, like, no.
Right.
And I just don't see how Weaver's authorized. And I think this is what the bankruptcy court said is you don't have any authority to file for bankruptcy, even if there's nothing that says you can't. You still need something that says you can.
Got it.
And so that was kind of my takeaway. Even just on first glance, that's kind of what I assumed would be the case. And that's what the bankruptcy court seems to have said. One interesting thing, I should have mentioned this before, is generally you can't put into a loan agreement a provision that says the borrower can't file for bankruptcy. That's prohibited. It's unenforceable.
Wait, say it again. You can't put.
There's basically, you can't restrict a borrower's right to file for bankruptcy.
Oh, okay.
It's called an ipso facto clause. You can't do it. I mean, you can put it in there. It just won't be enforced. That was one thing that I thought might be relevant here, but the bankruptcy court said Uncle Nearest can file for bankruptcy. It just has to be the receiver because the receiver is the man in charge now. And the guy in charge has to be the one to file for bankruptcy.
Got it.
So saying that, I mean, there's nothing in section 10 that says that I can't file for bankruptcy either, or you can't file for bankruptcy on behalf of Uncle Nearest. So like,
she could have asked me. I'll do it for her. No, I'm just kidding.
There is a thing I've seen to get, I don't think this would really work here, but I've seen receiverships get taken out through bankruptcy by an involuntary petition, which is other creditors, like junior creditors, will file an involuntary petition and force the company into bankruptcy. So like if other people that Uncle Nearest owed money to wanted to get the company into bankruptcy, they could file a petition because creditors are authorized to file an involuntary petition. There are rules about what kind of creditors can get a company into bankruptcy.
Got it.
That would be the sort of thing that you might see in this case.
Is it typical, because it seems to be the case in this particular case, is it typical when you are in a receivership that there is a stay put in place regarding anyone else who wants to sue you?
Yeah, that's pretty common. I think there was one against Weaver or both Weavers, Don Weaver. I don't want to mess up names again.
Keith, his name.
Okay. There was, it's pretty common. One of the main reasons is, well, there are a couple of reasons. One is that sometimes that person will have receivership assets. Like if, let's say Weaver took a bunch of money from the company that she was, I'm not saying she did, but let's say that she took a bunch of money from the company that she's not authorized to, that money would be receivership property. So by having a stay against lawsuits against Weaver, you can protect the receivership assets that way. It's also just practical. You don't want multiple lawsuits against the same set of people going on at the same time. It interferes with administration of the estate, but it's pretty common.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll see a stay order put in place, and it's funny. I've actually spent a lot of time. There'll be a stay against a specific person, and I have to go to status conferences like every 3 months for years, just checking in and be like, yes, judge, it still stayed.
Yeah, they still can't be sued.
Yep. Yeah. The gears of justice grind slow, but yeah, it is very common to have lawsuits against the owners at the same time as you have the receivership lawsuit too. That's very common.
Okay.
Who catches the filing of the bankruptcy? Like she files it with the court, and does the judge then say, "Did you check with your receiver?" You know, who informs the receiver that this is happening?
Yeah, I mean, I assume that they had to serve the bankruptcy petition on the company. Well, maybe
I'm
not.
trying to remember because actually what ended up, I don't know how the receiver found out, but he included in his motion, he included the email that he sent to the the attorney for the Uncle Nearest team, Fawn Weaver's team. And he was like, "Hi, I was just notified that you filed for bankruptcy. As I'm sure you know,
I
you
saw
can't
that.
do that." And then she was like,
I was
they didn't
wondering.
say
Yeah.
I was wondering
Yeah.
if the receiver found out through social media since she posted it on social
Well,
media.
he mentioned that too because she went
It's
on
definitely
her.
possible.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, she does seem to say a lot of stuff.
He's now asking for for the judge to order her to stop posting on social media, to not talk about this on social media anymore. That is now his request, which is interesting because initially with the receivership order, the judge said the receiver, it has control over everything, but you, Fawn, will still be able to handle all the marketing and branding because I recognize you are the face of this company. And so you need to be able to do that. So I imagine her argument is going to be, I'm just trying to still market and brand the company, but they're now asking her to not be able to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. On one hand, if I were the receiver, I'd want her to keep sharing all of her thoughts with the world in real time so I can know what to expect.
That's true. Yeah.
But also, I mean, this certainly, taking a step back, generally speaking, this clearly isn't good for the Uncle Nearest brand. I think everyone agrees with that. And I mean, the point of a receivership is to maintain the value of usually a company or the property, and that's clearly not happening here.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they'll. I mean, as far as all of her accounts are like in her name, right? She's not tweeting from like at Uncle Nearest or anything. I don't know.
No, they're from her. As far as I know, they're from her.
Yeah. That'd be tricky. As far as I don't think there'll be any sanctions on the bankruptcy, just because like it's a close call, but judges generally don't like issuing sanctions, especially they just appealed. I think they appealed the bankruptcy dismissal today.
Yep, they did.
So I doubt they'd issue sanctions until that's resolved at the very least. So I don't think we'll get an answer on that.
Got it.
In the near future.
Well, that's cool.
What's the worst case scenario when it comes to this receivership? Them selling every bit of Uncle Nearest?
Yeah, I mean the worst would be there's a bunch of fraud and then you have to spend years litigating all the fraud and then you sell everything. But yeah, I mean, selling everything is definitely a possibility. I think, beneath all of the sort of, exciting litigation and all the back and forth, it seems like the parties do kind of agree on a lot of the stuff that's actually important. There's no dispute that there was a loan agreement between, was it Mid-America? What's it called?
Farm Credit.
Yeah, Farm Credit, Mid-America, and Uncle Nearest. There are like 4 or 5 different sets of defaults under the loan agreement. It seems like there's an agreement on how much money is owed. it seems like they agreed that there was a $10 million payment that wasn't made in about, like a year ago, I think, a year and a half ago or something like that. And so, let me see. Yeah, I was pulling it up. A $10 million pay down that wasn't made. So I think that's kind of the bedrock of everything. And if it's determined that the company isn't going to sell for more than $108 million, I could definitely see a sale resulting from all of this, which would be unfortunate for a number of reasons, but it's definitely possible.
What's the issue with just having the receiver say, okay, look, you all owe this amount of money. Let's make a payment plan. And I'm going to stay here to make sure that we pay the payment, stay on track until we pay this off. Why is it so much, let's sell this off, let's sell that off? Why not take the income that's coming in now and whatever's liquid that we can pay the debtors? Let's just do that. It's to me, it seems that cookie cut. Like, let's just make our payments.
Yeah, I mean, selling is definitely like the last resort. That's definitely the worst case scenario. Ideally, that's what you'd want to do. And I think that's what the receiver was talking about in the first report, the first interim report, was, we have a profitable business here. Maybe it's not profitable enough to pay everything the way it's supposed to right now, but we'll restructure some stuff, pay it back, pay the debt back, as best we can, and keep things moving that way. I think the problem would be, why you wouldn't want to do that is if they just don't have enough money to keep the business running and their value will only continue to decline. I know that, I don't know what the amounts are, but I know that Mid-America has still been putting additional money into the business
every month.
Oh,
so if they say we don't want to do that anymore, now all of a sudden you have a business that's not even operating and isn't generating that revenue anymore. Okay. And in that case, you wouldn't have a revenue stream to pay back at all, which is really the concern. And that's pretty common, where you'll see like the person that's owed the money put even more money into the receivership just to try to get it back running so they can get even more of their money back later. But
can you explain what solvency? I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
What solvency is?
No. So solvency can mean different things. I think I listened to one of your podcasts. You were talking about solvency, and you mentioned balance sheet solvency, which is one definition. So that's you just compare the assets to the liabilities, which is your property. You have 100 million of assets and you owe $90 million. Therefore, you're a solvent company. So that's one measure of solvency. You'll see that in bankruptcy a lot in terms of like whether you can file for bankruptcy or stay in bankruptcy. But then there are other tests for solvency, like cash flow solvency, which is the simpler one. And it's, are you paying your bills as they come due? And so in that context, you can have a very different result between those two tests. I mean, you can have, let's say that somebody's going to pay me $100 million a year from now, but I have a cell phone bill due next week. Well, obviously I'll be solvent in terms of the balance sheet, but I can't pay my bills as they come due. And so that's why you'll have those different kinds of solvency. And then you have even more complications within those, like, because you can build a balance sheet you can value assets differently. So you can, even if you're looking at strictly a balance sheet solvency test, you can have two people look at the same balance sheet and get you different results. So that's why I initially said, no, I can't tell you what solvency is, because it's complicated. But I think those are the two that are being discussed the most in this case. The
balance sheet, and then can you pay your bills?
Cash flow.
Uncle Nearest said that it's only about the balance sheet. And then the receiver said, no, it's also about, can you pay your bills on time? And clearly y'all can't. That's why Farm Credit is still giving y'all $2 million a month. Okay, so is the United States of America solvent?
Didn't prepare for that question. Let me see. I mean, I guess so on a balance sheet test, because we own like the military. That's worth a lot of money. I'm
kidding.
Okay,
you mentioned some crazy receivership stories, and we want to hear one or two.
Okay.
I don't even know in what regard, but like what's something interesting, fascinating, something the audience would be like, what? That we can
Okay.
we can
So the last one that I worked on it was in California. It was mostly like Las Vegas, but also a little bit in California. And the scam, this is a Ponzi scheme case. And the way this one worked was there were these guys. This is such a stupid idea, but it's also like genius that they thought of it. I don't know how you have this idea. They were taking people on tours of marijuana grow facilities and saying, this is our grow facility. We want to build another one, so give us money to build this other grow facility.
Okay.
The problem is they didn't actually own the grow facility they were giving the tours of.
Oh, okay.
So they were just walking these people around, be like, we own this, give us money to build another one. And they raised like $40 million in funding, just giving people, yeah. This one was relatively short-lived because it didn't really have the kind of, complexity where you can hide transactions for a long time. It was over a couple of years, we think.
Okay.
As far as I remember, and this is all public, I'm not sharing anything. Because again, receivers have to write reports. They have to write quarterly reports where they tell you what's going on. You could go look this up if you want to. And these guys were just lighting the money on fire. It was just, they were buying cars. They had expensive, very expensive relationships with women.
Mm-hmm.
They were giving them money. They were buying cars for the women. They were putting them up in
So the
Las
people
Vegas
who gave
penthouses.
over their money, who gave the money to them, were expecting a return.
Yeah, they were expecting a grow facility to be constructed.
Okay.
And there was just nothing on that front being done. It was just the money was coming in and it was going straight out.
Right.
There's actually, it's funny. So there was a face of the scheme was a rapper from like Orlando, I think. His name's Big Rig Baby. And he used to be like a big rig driver. And his album's on YouTube if you want to check it out.
Real?
But
This is for real?
is this for real? Yeah. Yeah, he actually had a chain. He had a chain made and it was like a big rig. It was awesome. I wanted to bid on it, but like I can't because I worked for the receiver, but it was sick, man. And like one of the, like he actually like used the money to make a music video. It was.
Oh, we got
he wasn't like the person, I don't think he was like the largest beneficiary, but
Okay.
Big Rig Baby.
Big Rig Baby.
Yeah, so it was a whole thing.
But you said it was short-lived in that. What does the receiver do in that situation? Because if the money's spent, I mean, what do you like repossess the cars? What do you sell them?
Yeah. I mean, if there's anything, I mean, a lot of the stuff you can't get back either because the money's just gone. But if there's a car, like say the Big Rig Baby buys a car, we could, if we need to, we could sue him and get the car back.
Okay.
It'd be like a fraudulent transfer is what we call it, or voidable transfer, where basically you undo the transaction, and you just take the car back, and then you sell the car. Okay. Sometimes it's in more complex Ponzi schemes, you'll have to go through like intermediaries and sue multiple people. But that's a big part of what we were doing, is trying to get assets back into the receivership estate, whether it be cars, private jets, yachts, houses. Houses are really common. People will buy houses with the stolen money. So there'll be a lot of real estate, clawbacks. I mean, everything that Harley Davidsons, there are these two guys they'd go buy Harleys on the weekends together with the stolen money. Okay. I mean,
$40 million.
Smoke them if you got them. Yeah. And then we also worked on, there was one, this was even before I graduated law school, but there was a Ponzi scheme in San Diego or Southern California. It was American National Investment. Gina Champion Cain was the head of the Ponzi scheme.
Gina Champion
Cain, like C-A-I-N.
Oh,
it was called American National Investments. It was like a $500 million Ponzi scheme, I believe it was ultimately. And there were like billions of dollars of transactions. And that Ponzi scheme It was based on, okay, so if you want a liquor license in California, sometimes you have to put money into escrow to like pay for the license while the liquor board is like deciding whether to give you the license.
Mm-hmm.
And she was basically inventing license applicants and saying these people need loans. And she was raising money from investors to like supposedly put into escrow to pay for these licenses that weren't actually being requested. And this is like a more complex Ponzi scheme where it lasted longer and there was more money raised because it's easier to hide the money. But yeah, I think the losses were eventually like $500 million and multiple billions of dollars in transactions and trying to unwind all that. And there were some very wealthy people involved. There were some banks that were sued. There were some escrow companies that were sued. And the receiver in that case is very, very highly qualified. And she eventually recovered more than 100%, but
really,
it's expensive to get that back. So I think the victims are going to get like 80% back. But,
wow,
which is pretty good. It's really good.
That is amazing.
Yeah, but it's
people are out here.
You could simply Google, just for the audience, Gina Champion. Before I could even finish writing her name, Google was like, "Oh, that's what you want," and then immediately it's 400 million Ponzi scheme star, and it is. She's everywhere. So if you want to look it up, you can. You can also look up Big Rig Baby because I did, and he with his Big Rig chain immediately comes on YouTube. So just FYI, go ahead. Sorry,
Big Rig Baby.
I love his album cover. Okay, I'm a fan of Big Rig Baby now.
Hilarious. Okay, you're gonna say something.
Oh, this is one. What are the sentences for these individuals? Like, what are they sentenced to for?
Well, this is civil though.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, since it's civil, it's just, hey, you're guilty, give me my money back and pay me however you can.
Well, it's both. So in Gina Champion Kane's case, there was both. The FBI was doing a criminal case at the same time the SEC was doing the civil case. That's pretty common because the SEC can't do criminal, but they'll all technically be going on in parallel. I know she got some prison time. I don't know how much. I don't know about. I left the firm before the Big Rig Baby stuff got
15
finalized.
Years.
15 years.
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy.
And this was just in 2021. The news release summary: San Diego, Gina Champion Kane, a longtime San Diego business leader, restaurateur, and real estate magnate, was sentenced in federal court today to 15 years in prison for masterminding a massive years-long Ponzi scheme and obstructing justice by hiding and destroying evidence from federal investigators. Okay.
Yeah, see, the thing with the feds is they're pretty good at finding stuff. This is a broader point about like discovery. People talk about like discovery and they think that they can hide stuff by like deleting emails but nothing's ever deleted. You know, it's
nothing never deleted,
especially with an email, because like somebody else has the email.
Yeah.
And once you find one like set of emails where one of them is missing, you know that something's deleted because you get discovery from this person, you get discovery from this person, and you see the email from this person to that person, and this person doesn't turn it over. You know that there are games being played.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
The FBI, they don't like it when you lie to them.
That's the thing about this digital world now, especially with digital currency. Everything is going to be tracked, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
From the piece of gum you buy at the grocery store, I'm gonna be able to track everything you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let alone $350 million.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hide that. Like, just there's so many transactions. It takes a long time to sort through all those transactions. That's probably the thing that the receiver spent the most time on, because it's not just like the transactions with the Ponzi scheme. It's the Ponzi scheme pays out money, and then that person, distributes money, and
what
it's
a headache.
That we said digital currency though. That reminds me. This was this was one of the sadder cases. Sometimes you have these Ponzi schemes where, it's involving hedge fund, and there are still victims, but it was a mortgage modification scheme, which were really popular. a few years back. They probably still are, where people, these are scum of the earth. They'll find people who are like behind on their mortgage and be like, give me your money, I'll fix it for you, I'll get you straight. And so they just prey on people who are, trying to save their house.
Oh.
And what they'll do is they'll take money and then they'll send all the lenders notices that like, you're not to contact the borrower, you only contact me.
Oh.
And a lot of times the banks are like, hey, like contact us, we can work something out. And the borrowers wouldn't even be getting those notices because they'd be going to the fraudster. And he actually, I made the joke about the Bitcoin in Vietnam earlier. That was his escape plan. He got away with not everything, but a fair amount of money.
Because he put it in Vietnam.
There's no extradition.
Yeah.
That's what
I'm not gonna.
Grandma Gotti was trying to do.
You talking about the Adelsons with Grandma Adelson. She was trying to go to Vietnam.
That's the best place to go, I think. Yeah. I should do like a power ranking of places to flee to. I think Vietnam's the place.
Top of the list. Makes sense.
I don't know where he is now. It's been years since I've looked at the case, but that was, I think, the first place he went. And
wow.
I will say that people are quite bad at using like Bitcoin to hide money. They'll just oftentimes people will just buy Bitcoin and keep it on like Coinbase or some other American exchange, which is basically just an American bank. So you can just, I think they're headquartered in Florida. You can just go to Coinbase and be like, give us the Bitcoin, and they will. So oftentimes people aren't very good at hiding money that way, but some people are.
Insane.
Yep.
Insane.
Oh my goodness. What I've taken away from this
is go to Vietnam if you're going to commit a crime.
Yes, and we should open up a
growth facility.
A growth.
Because apparently people want to invest.
There have been a lot of marijuana scams. People think it's like it's the hot new thing, right? Like,
yeah.
We should open up get a van.
Tour somebody else's property. Act like it's yours. You plan on building a new one. Just give me your money. And then go to Vietnam.
20 to 40
Noted.
million.
Heard. I'm just kidding. Feds aren't listening to us. What did Dirk say at the beginning? If the feds is listening, this ain't for real. This is for fake.
Everything. What did he say at the start of Wolves? He was like, everything here is props or something. Like,
yeah, I love it.
Have you ever worked a case where you find what you needed to find and you like, I got them now?
Let me see. I think it's usually before that moment usually happens before we get involved. I think it's usually like the SEC that would find the stuff, and then they file the civil complaint, and then the receiver gets appointed. Okay. But sometimes there's property found. Again, that's usually by the receiver, but definitely some surprising moments where there's property that you didn't expect to find.
Yeah.
And things that were purchased that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
Like there's sometimes we'll find like the Ponzi scheme will have an office that you didn't know about, and then people will go in and look through the office, and you'll get a whole set of information that you didn't have before. And that's exciting.
Wow.
I can't even imagine. Well, thank you. We've kept you for a while and talked about all of the things, which I appreciate. So thank you for I think this is actually really helpful. And even hearing your prediction that you don't think the sanctions will kind of happen in this one.
It's a close call. I could see either way.
Yeah. Okay. It'll be interesting to see how this one pans out. But filling us in and sharing your stories is helpful. Tell the people where they can find you. Again, I've said it, but you make sure you say it.
I'm on Twitter hold on, let me pull it up. I think you can just search my name on Twitter and you'll find me. And on YouTube. Also on YouTube. Yes. I'm not very good at this self-promotion business, but
I know. That's why I force people to do it, because I have to be forced to.
Yeah.
The Happily Angry Lawyer, I think is
such a long name.
Yeah, if you search, actually, it's Happily Angry ESQ for Esquire. So if you search that on X, you'll find him there. And then on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, it was too long. That's right.
We'll put it in the description as well. But if you search Happily Angry Lawyer on YouTube, you'll find him there as well. So thank you very much to Jim for joining us. We appreciate it. And again, make sure you guys follow and support. And until next time, we'll get you back when we have some Moontuk updates.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully any day. We'll see.
Hopefully. All right. Have a good one.
Right. Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Okay. So thank you again to Jim for joining us. I want to end with one thing before we go. Okay. So Greg is going to jump off quickly just because it's an early day for our child. But I want to wrap us out with one thing before I go. I am working on a video. This video will go to the public on Friday. And so what I am about to refer to, this case, the video will be out by then. And it's just worth the watch. So context is, in Wisconsin, the sentencing was on Monday, 2 days ago. And so it's a case I had been following, just kind of came across my timeline. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but then I fell in deep. So it's in Wisconsin, and this man gets charged with kidnapping the woman was 79 at the time, 79-year-old woman, widow. Actually, her husband had passed a few years prior. And it's the day before Thanksgiving in 2022. So she goes to this bar that her and her husband used to go to. And she is sitting at the bar. And when she's done paying, she goes and she leaves. And as she's getting into her car, one of the men at the bar gets into her vehicle with her. So he ends up holding her for like 16 hours from 3 p.m. the day before Thanksgiving until like the morning of Thanksgiving. He like finally lets her out. So that's like the quick backstory. That said, when she is called in to testify, now, mind you, he had been having some issues. The judge is clearly over him. The trial has been delayed a number of times. And so I have to just... The woman is okay, and this man has wreaked havoc a lot. Okay, so know that going in. So anyway, at this point, she's 82. She's called to the stand to testify, and in the middle of her testifying, this happens. I'm just gonna play it, so just go with me, okay?
I think it's like the one and only policeman that approached me. By that time, we had gotten the door open, and I could like swing my legs out and stretch and get some fresh air.
Okay, Ms. Hennel, I'm going to interrupt your testimony, and we're members of the jury. We're going to take a break at this time. I'll have you back shortly. Okay. Remind you that the trial is not concluded. Do not talk about this case and do not conduct your own research. And then, Ms. Hennel, you may step down from the witness stand and return to the gallery.
Now listen, okay, if you watch that without any context, you may be like, oh my gosh, he's having a medical emergency. Let me just tell you, now, I'm going to ruin it for you. That man is fine. Okay. He was representing himself. Okay. He was pro se. The man next to him is his standby attorney who he hates. Okay. The man has gone through 7 attorneys. So after 7 attorneys, he's like, I want to represent myself. And so the judge is like, I'm gonna let you do that. But the last attorney that you just fired, I'm gonna make him be your standby. Just because you don't really know what you're doing, you need somebody there. So the man that's next to him, who's kind of like, he's like falling out, right? And mind you, the woman who's testifying is the kidnapping victim, right? He doesn't do this to no other victim. In the middle, no other witnesses. In the middle of the key witness for this case, okay, she's 82 now. 82 testifying about this traumatic experience of this man kidnapping her. And that's what he does. And then his standby attorney is just like this. You guys, there are so many moments during this trial where the standby attorney is just like, he's so over it. It is comical. Okay. So anyway, I am working on that video. It should be out again by the time this episode comes out on Friday. The video, the full recap, should be out. Plus, I'm going to upload kind of how I was doing with Afroman. I'm going to put up the individual pieces. So in case my recap inspires you to want to watch more, because I'm leaving out so much in the recap. There is so much more that I just can't fit it all in. The video would be 5 hours. So I'm going to put it all up in case you want to go down that route. So anyway, that's all. We are not going to be filming next week. We'll be on spring break. So make sure you come back the week after. Okay. We're going to take a week off, but don't forget about us. We'll be back the week after. Appreciate y'all for watching, listening, being here. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hype. There's a new thing on YouTube. If you're watching versus listening, the audio, there's a new thing where you can hype a video, and that basically tells the algorithm that you want the algorithm to show this to more people. This is something more people should see. So anyway, I'm new to that. A few people have been doing it to my videos, so I appreciate that. Okay, so make sure you join the Patreon, patreon.com/ImNotALawyerBut. Make sure you follow on all platforms. I'm Not a Lawyer, but I'm on all the platforms you can think of. Until next time, not next week, the week after. Okay. High me up. High me up. All right, bye. Oh. Oops.